journey in calm and respond. I see Liz has just joined us. Hi, Liz. Glad to see you. I hope you've been enjoying this so far. Yeah, I can't wait either, actually. So, it's ought to be interesting. Let's see. Tell you what, it's taking a little bit getting used to. Of course, you guys can't tell, but there's a bit of a delay between my speech here and what I'm seeing online. And I was told that was going to happen, but it's still a little odd to get used to. Good. I'm glad, Liz. I'm glad you have. So, if you don't mind, can you share real quick a little bit about how you've used either the box breath or the infinity continuous breath? I'd love to hear it. I know I got to wait a little bit before you even see what I say, and then wait for you to respond if you do. Let's see. Looks like someone else is trying to pop in. Let's see what this says. Oh, I guess Michael's having a hard time getting logged on here. Let's see, I'm just letting him know that I'm here. Alright. Get back in here. Alright, let's see. I'm just reading what you wrote here real quick, Liz. Looks like you got bumped off and joined again. I've always had... So, the infinity breath, did it seem to help? Yeah, it is kind of like a reset. You know, people don't realize just how simple a solution changing how you breathe can affect you in so many different ways. I mean, really, I've only been really touching on the very surface of what we're capable of achieving if we learn different ways of breathing and controlling our breath. I'm glad. I'm glad it did seem to help. Hopefully tonight we'll get into one final technique that I've learned. There's not really, I don't know of any real documentation on it. It's one of the first ones that I was taught over 30 years ago, or right at about 30 years ago, when I first got into, started getting into a little bit of meditation, and a gentleman was trying to teach me how to focus on my breath in meditation, and he's the one who taught me this. So it's been the most practiced technique for breathing I've used over the years under a multitude of situations. Cool, Michael. I'm glad you got to join us. I'm glad you got it worked out. It always it's always good to see you pop on here, my friend. We go way back. We really do. All right. Well, with that, why don't we go ahead and get started? I know Belinda said she wouldn't be able to make it live, so I'll make sure that she has access to the replay. In the meantime, we'll go ahead and get started. I already kind of touched base. Monday I talked a lot about the benefits, the actual benefits of learning to breathe differently and breathe properly, and more of the technical side of it. And then Wednesday I got a little personal with you and shared my early journey with why the breathing and air in particular, the wind, became so important to me. So tonight I thought I would bring it a little bit closer to the present and talk more specifically about why I felt drawn to do this whole journey in teaching the breathing with the calm and respond over over this past week. For anyone who hasn't seen any of Journey in Principles, Journey in Principles is the blog I started in 2015, and quite honestly, before that, I was actually trying to start up another blog called Politically Honest, and it was because after a major loss that I know I talked about earlier in the week that I went through in 2012, I went through a major personal spiral, and I became very angry at the world. I felt very much like the world caving in on me, and even though I had multiple years away from drugs and alcohol, the death of my close friend and brother and mentor, and having to go through so many different funerals in 2012, and literally, when I lost my brother, I lost the one person I spent the most time with, and even my wife and his wife used to tease us because we saw each other more than they got to see us, because we worked together. We rode together, we were in recovery together, and I mean, we were around each other continuously, really. And when he passed away, it was at the end of near the end of 2012, and we had already gone through many funerals together, and then within a month after he passed away, an old mentor of mine passed away, and I ended up having to do his service formally as well, with the help of someone else. And I became very focused on my family. My wife and I were still struggling in the sense of me coming to terms with her clinical anxiety and her battles with depression, and she was still struggling with how she was raised and brought up, and I was struggling with changes within my club, changes in my surroundings, and I got very angry. And of course, this is also, I was taking on a lot of pressure with being the breadwinner of the house, which I love what I do, but it takes a lot of my time. I do not make anything off of Journey in Principles as of yet. My goal right now is to figure out a way to get Journey in Principles to mainly just pay for itself for now. I'm a full-time production manager of live events, so I have to be on the job a lot. If I'm not at the office, I'm on the job a lot, from 6 a.m. in the morning until sometimes 2 a.m. at night. Um, it can be very stressful, very demanding. I've got three wonderful kids that are all active in karate and gymnastics and Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and Cub Scouts, and the financial aspect of trying to raise a family and trying to do it the right way, and I with no outside help, no benefits of per se of any type. Um, and I got really angry at the world, and I started lashing out, and I started writing as a means of complaining about politics and about the way politics were ran and about politicians, and I started out blogging about what was wrong with how things were being ran, and I kind of got into that whole mindset and wrapped up in receiving, signing up for the different newsletters with all the different political banter that was going on right around 2014, 2015, and something happened. I finally got burned out on the way I was feeling. My wife and I had gone through several battles, and we did seek help. That's one thing about the both of us, is both of us have always been open to seeking help. When it comes to our relationship, we've stayed very much committed to bettering our relationship and stuff. And I went through and started really trying to get back into the basics of what used to make me okay and my recovery. And I went back to my basics, and I signed up. I forget exactly how I got introduced to it, but there was a journaling challenge, a blogging challenge that went out, and I accepted this challenge. I signed up for it, and it gave you prompts to write with, and in doing so, I used Politically Honest as my site to write on and blog on, because I already had it going. It wasn't very big. I didn't have any followers on it. It really was just a ranting site for myself. But the funny thing was every time I wrote anything on there, it almost always ended with some type of positivity at the end of it. So I that's always been something about whenever I've shared, even early on, if I started sharing in a group of people in a group setting, for some reason I could walk in and be completely depressed, completely upset. By the end of the sharing, I was sharing in a positive, solution-oriented way, and it was just natural to me. And that kind of happened with the blog. So anyway, from that, I started changing how I was writing, from writing about politics to writing more and trying to write more about where spiritual principles are missing in a lot of day-to-day life. When you talk about life on life's terms, that can be a very, very loose term. We get wrapped up in morals and ethics, which are very, very subjective to how you're brought up and where you're raised and what culture you're in and what belief you believe in. But the spiritual principles are universal, and I needed to get back to my core foundation of my recovery. And my foundation is very much based off of a piece of literature that was never fully published. I was taught out of a rough draft of some 12-step literature that was never accepted and never approved through any 12-step fellowship. It was written by a member in the 12 steps, but it was all about these 12 core spiritual principles, and that's always been the foundation of my understanding. And I wanted to get back into those basics. And in doing so, I got back into my meditation. I started practicing meditation every day. I started looking at my health, looking at how I was eating, looking at how I was taking care of myself. And I have a beautiful young wife who is 15 years younger than me. We have young kids. For some of my age, my kids are fairly young. I mean, I do have a 19-year-old now, but the kids at home are 9, 10, and 15. And I started looking at how I was taking care of myself, and how I was living, how I was eating, how I was sleeping, how I was waking up in the morning, how I was feeling when I laid down at night. And I got back to the basics. I got back to talking to my mentor in the program. We talk about sponsorship. I was talking to my sponsor, and I started getting back into my meditations. And as I continued writing on Journey and Principles, not very well, mind you. If you do go to journeyinprinciples.com and you go to any of the early blogs, I mean, I really don't really see any of my articles or blog posts or whatever you want to call them being like very high quality authorship. That's really was never the purpose of it. It was just to kind of journal and express myself. But in getting back to these basics and the basics of how I was living and stuff, and starting to look at where I was missing the principles in my life, where I wasn't applying spiritual principles, where I wasn't taking care of myself. That's when I got back into meditation. I got back into exercise. I got back into being grateful for what I did have, instead of focusing so much on what I didn't have. And in that whole process, I started looking for a series of meditations that were specifically driven towards 12-step recovery, 12 principles, more principle oriented and stuff, and they didn't exist. At least nothing that I could find that was along the lines I was looking for. And so I started writing my own meditations, and at first it was just a personal thing. But as that developed and stuff, and I started talking to a few people and stuff, and I started sharing it with a couple of people that really started enjoying them, I decided to take it even further, and I started trying to actually record and produce these meditations. And as I talked with more people about what I was doing, and starting to get back into my own recovery, and sharing more in groups, and sharing more about the meditation and stuff, there was a lot of people that expressed their difficulty with meditation. I hear a lot about how I just can't quiet my mind enough. I just can't quiet my mind enough. I heard that a lot. I still hear that a lot. That's the number one reason I hear from people that they struggle with meditation. I just can't quiet my mind. And the problem with that is meditation really isn't about quieting my mind. Not for me. I was taught a long time ago that the key to meditation isn't really shutting your mind down. It's about finding the gap, as Wayne Dyer talks about it. He's actually got a book, or had a book out. May he rest in peace. He's a wonderful author, and I love all of his work. But he talks about finding the gap. And what he means by that is, there's an old Zen saying that the music is in the space between the notes. What that means is any sound we make it's the pause, it's the gap between the sounds that make the music. The sound itself is just noise. Any note you play, without that stop, without that silence in between, without that pause between the notes, without that change in tone, it's just a sound. It's just noise. And so, as the saying goes, the music is in the space between the notes. And that's what Wayne Dyer was trying to talk about when he talks about finding your relationship with God in the gap. It's not about quieting the mind. It's about recognizing, when you're in meditation, it's about recognizing that moment of space between your thoughts. Sometimes I've said several times to people I have worked with on meditation and stuff, it's not about learning to quiet your mind. It's about learning to allow your mind to be free, to where you can hear, you can listen to your own thoughts, you can listen to your own mind. For me, when I started meditating, and instead of trying to shut my mind down, I started listening to what was going on in my mind, I realized that I was always so wrapped up in trying to shut my mind down that I never really stopped to listen to what my mind was actually thinking, what was going on in my mind. I had to learn how to put that pause in my thoughts. And I started realizing just a few weeks ago, as I was talking to somebody that I was working with, I always referred back to how someone breathes when I'm trying to help them understand meditation. And it was like a light bulb kind of went off, and the idea of I have these different techniques for different ways of breathing I've used over the last several years. I've gotten really active back into using the different techniques, and I don't hardly ever talk about it. And yet, to me personally, breathing is so important to my health, and getting back into taking better care of myself. I talked about, the changes I made. I quit smoking right before Magic passed away, right before 2012, right at the beginning of 2012. And I stopped smoking, and I had to, I started doing a bunch of lung exercises to get my lungs built back up, not thinking about it. And so as I progressed and started getting back to the basics and started looking at the meditations, and I started naturally going back to some of the basic breathing exercises that I had known over the years, and looking for some new ones, it became a natural process, and like I said a few weeks ago, it kind of dawned on me that if I was going to really help anybody with learning how to meditate in a natural sense, not meditate like a Zen Buddhist master, not promise some unrealistic enlightenment, but just just meditating as a person, as just the average everyday person, it would have to start with breathing. It would have to start with the breath. It would have to, really, when I break down everything that I've learned about mindfulness, about meditation, about being comfortable in my own skin, about being where my feet are, about practicing spiritual principles in all of my affairs, and with putting other people's principles, your principles, before my personality in all these different areas, to break it down to one key element that has had the most profound effect on my self-worth, my self-being, my self-value. It is in the breath. Just simply how I breathe. And that's why I decided, that's why I feel like I was drawn to try this live event this week, was to get to that simplicity. I love simplicity. I love, I don't prescribe to that cliche, keep it simple, stupid. I prefer saying keep it super simple. It's a lot more positive way of saying it. And I can't think of anything that can be more simplistic than simply helping someone learn to breathe differently, helping someone find their present self in their breath, helping them find their own connection with the divine architect, with God, with Allah, with yourself, with however you believe, but finding that connection simply through breathing, that space, that time that it takes for you to focus on your breath. The amazing thing about this type of work is it really does prove that multitasking is somewhat of a fallacy. When you focus on your breath, it's pretty much impossible to focus on anything else. You breathe naturally without ever thinking about it. But when you focus on what you do naturally and you learn to change the nature of your breath, in a sense, you're learning to change your own nature. And when you're focused on changing your breath, it's really difficult to have focus on anything else in that specific moment. And it's at that specific moment, for me, that I find myself in that gap. And so that's why I wanted to do this week. I really do hope that the handful of y'all that participated in this will continue to share this with others. I do plan on I'm looking at probably editing some of the gap, the space at the beginning of these videos where it's just me kind of setting things up and getting ready, editing that out and then uploading these to possibly a channel on YouTube or something, so that they become open and available a lot easier whether you're on Facebook or not. In the meantime, I've also used this as an opportunity to kick off the Ask It Basket community. I have been thinking about starting this Ask It Basket community for some time now, and the idea behind the Ask It Basket community is to develop a community that is specifically discussing our journey in spiritual principles, our journey in dealing with issues beyond just drugs and alcohol. I'm still very active in 12-step recovery. And there are tons of 12-step recovery support groups on Facebook and outside of Facebook. I wanted to start a group that went beyond just 12-step recovery for addiction and alcohol. I wanted to have some connection with other people who are dealing with either their anxiety or their depression or their grief, or married to someone who suffers from anxiety, grief, or helping get through depression, or just help someone that wants to be better than what they were yesterday. One of my most common greetings with someone, when someone asks me how I'm doing, if I'm in my normal state, I say better than yesterday, hopefully not as good as tomorrow, because it's a perpetual mindset of growth. And I want to connect with people who want that type of growth, who want that type of communication with each other. I hope that the Ask It Basket becomes a place that people can come to, and we can talk about breathing, we can talk about recovery, but we could also talk about spiritual principles. I only believe in 12 core spiritual principles. That's it. I believe in many principles, many values. But as far as core universal spiritual principles, I only believe in 12. And I love talking about them, but I also love hearing other people's understanding and definitions of them. And so that's what I'm hoping the Ask It Basket will grow into. I don't want to open this up to where just anybody can be invited to it. It is designed to be a support group for chat about journey and principles, about meditation, about the breathing series, and that's what I'm hoping will grow out of this. I hope each one of you will remain active in the Ask It Basket after tonight, and we could continue talking. And if y'all really enjoyed this past week and stuff, I would love to do this again when my time allows me to, and when I have a better idea of some information that might be useful. With what I'm trying to accomplish here, I'm actually trying to fulfill my own need to altruistic service to others in a way that can eventually be self-supporting to itself. With that, I touched on a lot of the why I started this and stuff. This is also my way of keeping myself accountable. For those who get to see me in a personal setting, when I share in a group setting, when I share in recovery groups, the way I walk in and stuff is very much myself, but the only way I can maintain that level of serenity that I enjoy living by is to be continuously working on my own recovery and continuously holding myself accountable. If you didn't know, I actually struggle with a lot of anger issues, or I used to struggle with a lot of anger issues, and I still, if you ever ride with me in a cage in a car, I ride in rush hour traffic in Dallas all the time, and I can be kind of vocal within my own cage, and that's the one area to where I struggle. One of the areas I struggle with practicing my breathing and practicing my own practicing what I preach, basically, is when I drive. But I've gotten better. I've gotten a lot better ever since I started this journey. I've gotten a lot better since I've started going more public with my journey and principles, and going more public with what I'm doing with my meditations, and going more public with wanting to live by spiritual principles. It's no longer just around other people that are in 12-step fellowships that I'm trying to show these principles to. I try to, these 12 principles have become the foundation of how I do my job, how I handle my marriage, how I raise my kids. I don't know how many times my wife has heard me start out saying something like, I don't want to, preach the program to you, but, and then I go into something I believe. And it all started with starting this journey in principles. And that's a big part of the reason why I still do this, and why I am doing this, is because I am trying to get to where this is a day in, day out scenario for me, to live by these principles, to focus on teaching people how to meditate, how to breathe, and how to find comfort in their own skin, how to become authentic to who they are. And you know what? If my authentic self is an angry, disgruntled, long-haired biker Texan, then so be it, as long as I'm being authentic. And that's what this is about. With that being said, I kind of went on to my own little rant again. I have a tendency to do that. With that being said, the final breath that I want to share with you guys, there's a few people that I have taught this to over the last couple of years. It really is the oldest technique that I was taught, right at about 30 years ago, when I first started really getting into learning about meditation and breathing and stuff. There was a gentleman that I was introduced to through a place outside of Redwood Lodge, outside of Whitney, that I talked about on Wednesday, at a place called the Chapel of Light. And back then there was only one chapel. It was an octagon, 2-story octagon room. You walked in. The center of it had a fiber optic, one of those old 70s style fiber optic fountains, and there would be music playing, and you could kind of go in and come and go as you please, and go in, lay down, find a spot on the floor, and you meditated. Some people fell asleep. Most of us tried to meditate, so forth and so forth. But I met one gentleman there, and I was struggling with the whole idea of meditation, and struggling with I felt like I wasn't doing it right. I felt like I was failing at meditating, because I had these expectations of what meditation was. I had this expectation of what you're supposed to experience when you meditate. I had that expectation of being able to quiet my mind and shut my mind down. And he told me that, and he was the one who told me that it wasn't about quieting my mind, it was about listening to my mind. But he taught me this one technique, and he called it the perfect breath. And I don't know of any documentation of it. I know that there is a Dr. Wines, I think it is. There is if you Google any type of breathing technique, one of the most popular techniques you'll run across is the 4-7-8. You'll see it just about any, just Google breathing techniques and scroll through there, and this Dr. Wise or Dr. Wine, I can't, I'm lousy with specific names and stuff, but he's the gentleman that introduced the 4-7-8 breathing technique, which is a very, very popular technique. And it's got a lot of proof behind it, a lot of scientific proof behind the benefits of it and stuff. It's real simple. It's obvious. Breathe in for 4, hold for 2, exhale for 8. It takes a little bit of practice to do that. It really does. It takes a little bit of practice to get to where you can adequately do a good inhale for 4, hold for 7 seconds, and exhale for 8 seconds, all through your nose. Um, and it can take a little bit of practice. But like just about any breath, I have not found any breathing technique that is unhealthy other than a shallow, inconsistent, unmindful breathing, that we first talked about. Um, but the 4-7-8 is the most common one. What I was taught by Stephen 30 years ago was a breath that he dubbed the perfect breath. And so that's what I've always called it. I called it the perfect breath. I use a form of the perfect breath in my meditation series. If you do any of the meditation series, my simple breathing in there is basically a form of the perfect breath, except it's visualizing numbers as you breathe out, which I picked up from the Silva system. The Silva system is another really was a really popular meditation series. I mean, Dr. Silva is one of the very I guess founders of a big meditation movement and stuff, and taught some wonderful the drinking glass, and just some different stuff beyond the basic staircase up and down and stuff. But they use a visualization of counting numbers in their technique, and I kind of adopted that to the perfect breath, and I use that in my meditations. But so the perfect breath is very simple. It's still a count, but instead of an even count like the box breath, one of the things that I've learned over the years is one of the best ways to balance out your oxygen and carbon dioxide is actually to exhale slightly longer than you inhale. It's a way to trick your breathing. If you purposely exhale longer than you inhale, then that's like flipping a switch to your sympathetic system, and it automatically kicks that relax relax and digest system rather than the fight and flight system. It's a quick switch that you can pretty much flip at any time. And so I actually use this same breath quite regularly, and when we're doing any of the calisthenics, any of the warm-ups, the Tabata workout that we do in the dojo. I mentioned in my email earlier and in a couple of posts, and I think I wrote about it actually in Journey and Principles this last year. My wife had a little bit of scare over me getting sick on a show. It ended up being my cheese allergy, which is kind of a different story. But the doctor thought I had a mini stroke. EKG came up with an abnormality, and anyway, they sent me to do a stress test. And so I went and did this stress test, and I went there. And I got on the treadmill, and for anyone who has never done a stress test, this is my first time to ever do a stress test. But they start you out slow on a fairly level treadmill, and their whole job is to try to stress your heart out. Their whole job is to try to get your heart elevated and peak it to see, how far they can push you to your breaking point as far as your heart rate. And so you start out somewhat slow, and as time progresses, if your heart rate doesn't peak, then they slowly start increasing the speed a little bit and slowly start to increase the elevation of the treadmill. And I went for 11.2 minutes on the treadmill, and my heart rate never elevated to a high peak. I don't remember exactly what the number was. If you're interested, let me know, and I'll pull up the old paperwork and somewhere, and I'll post it at some point somehow. But I ended up going for 11.2 minutes, and the nurse that was running the test, finally just stopped me and said, that's plenty of time, that we you're good, go ahead and stop. And they stopped me, and I went in, and the heart doctor, my wife can name all the different doctors, I can't, but the heart doctor came in and said, your heart's fine. You don't have any problems with your hearts at all. You know, and I did the perfect breath while I was running on the treadmill. You know, it's an easy breath for me to practice. I actually, some of the guys that I have worked with to try to help them with their recovery and their anxiety and stuff, I have taught them this breath, and actually have suggested to a couple of them to stare at themselves in the mirror and look themselves in the eye, and do this breath as they're looking at themselves in the eye, to kind of bring themselves into the moment, and to see themselves, and kind of open themselves up to what's going on with them. And it's had some profound effect. But it's very simple. You start out with, first of all, you start out by putting the very tip of your tongue on the roof of your mouth, right behind your upper teeth. As weird as this is, I have had to have my teeth completely redone, so I'm not really going to do this part, because in order for me to really touch the tongue behind my teeth to the roof of my mouth, I have to take my dentures out, and I don't think you want to see that. But you start out by putting the tip of your tongue up on the roof of your mouth behind your upper teeth, and exhale, as let all the air out of your lungs as much as you can. You should make a whooshing sound as you exhale that air out to begin with. If you're someplace in public, you can do it quietly. It still works. It's still effective. But if you are by yourself, or you're not embarrassed to make a loud whooshing sound, then it really does kind of kickstart things if you just let all your air out with a good whoosh, with the tip of your tongue on the roof of your mouth. Then, like any other breathing technique we've talked about, you breathe in through your nose for 4 seconds. Count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 2 seconds, and then exhale through your mouth slowly for a count of 7. That's your count. 4, 2, 7. If, like I said, if you try to Google 427, you're more likely what's going to come up is Dr. Wise 478. I was always taught the 427. It works beautifully for me. I've used it, like I said, under many different circumstances. I've used it, and it's a good all-around breath. The box breath, we talked about, was predominantly about anxiety. And being a pause before your anger or your tension builds up. The infinity breath, the quiet continuous breath, being great for insomnia and calming you at night and so forth. This is a good overall breath just to kind of help control the elevation of your heart rate. It's still just like any other breathing technique. As you start doing it, it brings you into the moment, which is part of the reason why I use it in my meditations. But I don't use it in the same pretense. You won't hear me count 4, 2, 7. It's a little different. But if you do my meditations, you'll recognize the spacing that I use in the breathing is very much 4, 2, 7. But you breathe in through your nose for a count of 4. Hold for 2, and then slowly breathe out for 7. And then breathe in for 4. You don't have to pause in between the 7 and the 4. You just Breathe in through the nose for 4. Hold for 2. And out for 7. Breathe in for 4. Hold for 2. Out for 7. The key is to learn to breathe out slower than you breathe in. And one of the reasons why this type of breathing is so effective as far as breathing out slower than you breathe in is, if you think about it, breathing in is actually more of a forced action than breathing out. When we breathe in, it's more forced. When we breathe out, it's a release. It's not anything we have to force. We're releasing it. It's just, you have to really kind of think about breathing in, but breathing out's natural, a lot more natural. So when you breathe in, you instinctively breathe in deeper if you breathe in a little quicker. And you'll fill up more. You'll get more air into your lungs, into your diaphragm. Hold it for just 2 seconds, and then slowly, and by slowly it focuses you to slowly let it out, release it out slowly, and it becomes more effective as you do it slower. And so the key is the 4 and 7. The 2 is just a simple pause in between. The real key is the 4 and 7. So breathe in for 4, hold for 2, and then out for 7. And that is what I call the perfect breath. It balances your heart rate. It brings focus into the moment. It can very much be used as a pause. It is a simple way to, as we say, catch your breath, because it balances out that breathing. It balances out the oxygen and the carbon dioxide. There is another breath that I use that's real close to a Kegel breathing. Yes, I know a little bit about the Kegel breathing also, ladies. I do have 4 kids, so I have shared in some of that experience. Luckily not the most painful part. But it is a breath that really does sum up how to breathe in a natural setting. And if you do it long enough, if you practice it enough, if you put enough focus and effort into it initially, like anything else, the more you do it, the more you'll get used to it, the more it becomes second nature. Nothing's difficult once we get used to it. And it's a very basic form of breathing that if you get to where you're breathing in that pattern on a daily basis without thinking about it, you'll find that you'll have more energy throughout the day. You'll be calmer, but with more energy. This breathing technique almost creates a paradox in your physical energy levels. Because it does. It helps bring you into the moment if you're focused on it. If you're not focused on it, it just kind of helps you feel a bit more energized than you would if you're constantly breathing shallow and exhaling, very shallow. This is a great way to bring in good fresh oxygen into your system and absorb it. You hold on to it for a couple of seconds and then release the toxins, release the carbon dioxide, release the negativity. And it's just a great way to kind of balance you out. And if you do struggle, if you have ever tried to meditate and you do struggle with the whole idea of quieting the mind, forget about it. Don't worry about quieting your mind. Start practicing the perfect breath and just listen to your mind. Just follow it for a second. Let your thoughts lead you for a little while. Eventually, you'll find yourself focusing more on the breath, less on your thoughts, and you'll find yourself in the gap, in the space between the notes. So, I really do hope that this week has been beneficial. Diana, I appreciate it. I just looked down and saw what you wrote. I really hope it has been transformational. And by all means, I hope that we keep connecting and keep communicating through the Ask It Basket. I do plan on continuing to develop the Ask It Basket and continue to work more on the Journey in Principles. I'll be honest, I have allowed my rough drafts pile up, and I haven't really posted anything in Journey in Principles in a while. But part of the reason why is because the site's about to be down for a few days because I'm moving the site from one server to another and trying to deal with some internal issues. But I want to keep the Facebook thing going. That's part of the reason why I did the Facebook Live thing for this time around. Eventually, I'm hoping to move our Facebook Ask It Basket group to a more private chat room setting within Journey in Principles, so that people can feel even more secure about opening up with us. The bad thing about Facebook groups is they can change their algorithms at any given time. They can change their rules, and I don't have any control over it. So eventually, if Journey in Principles, or when, as my wife says, when Journey in Principles actually starts paying for itself, I am going to continue developing it, and I want to eventually create a place that we can go to online and feel secure and safe to share, not just about recovery as 12 steps, but for people that aren't in 12 steps, that still suffer from obsessive compulsiveness, from depression, from anxiety, from being human, from trying to live up to everybody else's standards when they feel differently inside. And that's what I hope the Ask It Basket will become. I don't want this to be an Ask It Basket setting to where I'm the one answering all the questions either. I want a place to where we all share our experience, our strength, and our hope with spiritual principles, with altruistic service, with community, with clarity, and with unity. With that, I think we'll wrap it up for this evening. I'm looking forward to going back through and catching up on everybody's post. This has been a wonderful week. Once again, I can't thank everybody enough. Please continue to participate. I will be putting out a new link that you can share with people, that they can still come in and sign up for the Ask It Basket. But I'm sorry. I am not going to approve anybody just because you invite them in. They need to sign up themselves and ask themselves to join us. Mainly because, I'll be honest with you, I have been invited to so many different groups myself that I didn't request to be a part of, and I have to go in and say, look, I didn't join your group and stuff. And I don't want people to experience that with the Ask It Basket. When people show up here, when they join us, I want them to join us because they want to join us. They want what we have to offer. They want what we're talking about, what we're sharing about, and not have to worry about people coming into the community not knowing how they got there. So with that, again, thank you, everybody. This has been a wonderful week. It's been a wonderful experience for me. Maybe some time from now, a year or two from now, when I look back at these early videos, I'll find a lot of joy and laughter in how this whole thing started. But until then, and until the next time, I'll see you in the chat rooms. Be sure to like Journey and Principles as well as the Ask It Basket. And we will talk again, I hope, soon. In the meantime, don't hold your breath. Thanks, guys.